Welcome to episode 38 of Meet the Voter on Blab. And who knows, this could be historic with Blab. You never know when Blab is going to be around, but we still love the platform. And today, it's a week later after the massacre. We've got Jonathan Denwood, our socialist Democrat from Carson City. Hi, Jonathan.
Hello, Bill.
I'm your Republican commentator from Reno, Nevada, future police academy guy. Rob doesn't know that, by the way. I got accepted to the police academy, Rob. I am going to go. When I eventually become a police officer, I'll be 4 days on and 3 days off so I can work on my digital media. And I'm really working on products, and I slowed down from podcasting every day. So that's what I'm up to, which is exciting. So what, I should stick it up. It took me a year to get this. We started out with 1,000 people, and we worked it down to 53, 2 classes. So my class starts July 11th. I really haven't been putting this out to anybody. Jonathan, I think, knew during the process, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, Bill.
You knew I was working. It took a long time, didn't it? Yeah, we talked about it last year. It's amazing. By the time you take your first test, the earliest you could possibly start is 6 months or a year out.
Wow.
So anyway, I think that's what they use to separate people too, that longevity. So Jonathan, this has been a crazy, crazy week. Trump is disintegrating. We've got Hillary Clinton, who I don't see how she could possibly become president with her record of handling secure and classified material because it was against the law. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it just gets crazier and crazier. I think one of the key stories has been the popularity of Mr. Trump in a number of polls is basically been quite hammered, and I think it does cause the Republican establishment some concern, not precisely about Mr. Trump losing the election, but them losing control of the Assembly and the Senate.
Well, he's not in control of Assembly and Senate. They are separate.
Yeah, but I think their concern is that if he got severely damaged in the election, it would have consequences to other votes.
Right. Well, a few things have happened in 2 weeks. We had, of course, his attack on the judge, which really hurt his numbers. Then after the terrorist attack last week in Orlando, where 49 souls were killed, his reaction to that was like, I told you so, and people didn't like the braggadocious. At least that's what I hear. Plus, Hillary is dumping $24 million in a commercial buy right now.
Yeah, I think that's the establishment narrative. I still think that Mr. Trump still stands a very good chance of winning the election, because the reality is that there's only about 12 states that will really decide the election, and his economical policies compared to Hillary Clinton in a number of those marginal states are attractive, Bill. So in pure political terms, he's reduced numbers in national polls doesn't mean that he cannot still win.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way. I mean, we know what we've both studied this for a year, and I feel that what will happen is you still got the FBI investigation. You've got, I mean, the Republicans themselves. I think a lot of people don't understand what Hillary Clinton has done with classified material. That you can't pay somebody $5,000 to bridge your classified to your unclassified and send it to your BlackBerry. That is so against the law and such a violation of security that it's considered treasonous, even for negligence. But it wasn't negligence; she actually paid. And so, if the FBI comes out with anything like we saw in the State Department's report, she will be prosecuted, providing Loretta Lynch and the president, push that forward. But if they don't, it's going to be public. And unfortunately, I just don't think the American public understands that. But there's a lot of people like me who have been in the military or government or have had clearances who understand it inside and out. And I just wondered, how much responsibility does every West Point grad, every person who ever knows, or Air Force, or wherever that might be, have to bring that to light to the American people? I love the song, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I can't really respond to that, because I think I think the system. I think there's a bit of a problem there, Bill, because in some ways she's more of a neocon than Mr. Trump is. There isn't a war or arms system or arms manufacturer that she hasn't liked or taken some form of payment from. So
or
she's
bank
or anybody basically.
The banks are the big things where she's been
But
funded.
the point I was trying to make, Bill, is that her and her foundation, her husband, they're very embedded in what Eisenhower called the industrial arms complex. And I think that's one of the factors that protects her, Bill, is that the kind of security arm industry would do quite well if she became president, Bill. So she's got some support there.
I'm not sure how well America will do if she becomes president. First of all, there'll be 3 Supreme Court judges that she puts into place who may take the Constitution and just say it doesn't exist.
I personally feel that's a bit of a red herring because she really isn't a Democrat, as far as I'm concerned, or progressive, or whatever term you want to use. I see her as really a corporate Ponzi, a supporter of corporate interest of I'm trying to find the right word. It escaped me. She's just bought by. Well, the Clintons have always been up for sale, to the highest bidder, haven't they? That's always been their pattern of operation, hasn't it?
It'll be interesting, with the background music you have, Jonathan, just on a side note, that when we put this on YouTube, if they don't flag it, it'll probably be flagged for Germany. They pick up any sound or music that's not like pure. But that said, I agree with what you're saying, but I just question, she is like worse than that. She's like the social and the military industrial complex tied in together. And that can be very expensive and very ruinous for America.
Well, she is the archetype supporter of crony capitalism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of welfare capitalism, there's never been a bank, insurance company, or anybody else in part of the establishment that she's not been happy to give them gobs of money.
Yeah.
There's never been a social platform for the poor or for the young that she's not been prepared to cut. So that's Hillary Clinton, isn't it?
I was under the impression that she fully funds the social welfare programs and gets a lot of votes from the new immigrants.
It's just, unfortunately, that, from the establishment media, that's the impression you get, but the reality is very different, Bill.
Hey, with that, let's go to a 2-second break because I want to put in my Nickcast at school.com. So, how do we get a minute of silence in the Starbucks? Quiet silence.
Oh.
I'm joking. But hit mute for a second. Jonathan froze. No, you're not frozen. There he goes. Okay, we can come back on now after the break. Okay, coming off the break, we just had a commercial for a Podcasting 101, found at netcasthome.com. Great product, isn't it, Jonathan? You were one of the trial dummies.
You're getting on with it, Bill.
Yeah, someday. The hardest part of technology is actually, I think, the WordPress platform, tying it all together and designing and creating it. What do you think? Well,
there's a lot of work to that, yeah.
Hey, speaking of that, let's talk a bit about technology and campaigns. We just finished up a campaign last week in Nevada. It was the 14th, a week after California. I just heard this from some very prominent Republicans that I talked to, which I helped with their webpage. And they said they were amazed at Joe Heck, who's a congressman down in Las Vegas, how much their social media was filled with his stuff on Facebook and all the advertising he did. And that's just the pixels. I said, well, it's probably just a pixel because you went to his website being a Republican. You picked it up, and so you saw his ad every time you turned on Facebook.
I'm sure they totally understood every word you were saying, Bill.
But it's becoming a lot less expensive to do. But Facebook is making $3 billion, $4 billion. Now we can talk about Facebook. Facebook made the news in politics. Was it Facebook? Yeah, they apparently were skewing the search. What do you know about that?
Well, it's funny enough, if you go to This Week in Startups, I'll get the link for you, which is a very popular podcast. They had a panel where they were discussing a couple of weeks ago this issue. And, it's well known that the board of directors of Facebook are in a lot of right wing in the right community are seen as being pro-left and actively are pro-left.
But are they crony capitalists? That's my question. Is crony capitalist right or left, or is it in the middle?
I really see them as bourgeoisie liberals, the San Francisco bourgeoisie liberals that, say the right things, but really don't really. It is really much of a bubble in San Francisco and the Bay Area, and they very much want to keep it. Their main concern, Bill, is it's not only political ideology. They are, to some extent, quite scared of Trump because of his proposed limitation of enabling them to employ people from outside the USA and giving them visas to work for Google and Facebook. And they have been using that to keep hourly rates down, and they actively try not to employ American citizens. So they're very, this will, if Trump did get into power and he was elected and he did some of the things he says he was going to do around this issue, it would dramatically affect their bottom line. So this is one of the reasons why they don't like him, Bill.
Yep. So, it's Trump is a unique guy. I don't know what would happen if he became president. I fear what would happen if Hillary became president. I'm very concerned about both. But, I like to talk about technology too. What do you see the future of technology and politics in the world is? How does technology impact what's going on? I remember the awakening in Egypt. I was on duty. I had my clearances back then, and we were just amazed. None of us knew what was going on. And it was basically through Twitter that people were communicating. And they were organizing.
This is another interesting. Well, I think it's interesting. The amount of money spent on internal and external security forces in this country is breathtaking.
Oh, it is. It is
absolutely breathtaking. But when let's look at an example of internal security, and let's quickly look at some examples of external intelligence. Well, the Orlando shooting. This individual had been interviewed multiple times by the FBI. He was on a watch list. He had a history of of being questionable about his mental balance.
Yeah, he had a temper.
He was from a family that were actively involved in political activism in Afghanistan. I would have thought that would have been a family and an individual where the security forces would want to keep a pretty tight watch and keep the whole family under a certain level of observation. But he was, I understand that he went into a gun shop and tried to purchase weaponry and body armor, and the gun shop owner wouldn't. He was so odd in his behavior that even though legally the gun shop owner could have sold him, he refused to help him. And he actually run up the local FBI office, this gun owner, because they were so concerned by this individual's behaviour, and no action was taken, Bill. Now, obviously, this is with hindsight, and hindsight is a fantastic thing, isn't it, Bill? But I would suggest to you that there's been a catalogue of these type of stories around the FBI, and and it's well known in the security community that the FBI really doesn't really want to deal with internal security.
And they're talking about the profiling and stuff like the Secret Service does and the FBI doesn't do. So that's probably a future within your departments. I worked a little bit with the FBI on some projects, and then as a city councilman, of course, public safety, dealing with the FBI, the DEA, and our own police department, the sheriff's department. And they almost take charge of things, too. It's hard to explain big operations.
Yeah, but I don't
Especially
think,
drugs.
I really feel there's a duality there. I think the system has been actively investing in the pooling of massive data of all American citizens, which I totally reject. But when it comes to actually identifying and actively observing people that should be of interest to the Internal Security Service, they're totally lacking, Bill. They have a track record of really appalling kind of dropping the ball, really. Now, I just want to get on to external security, the CIA. I really think their track records, let's face it, their observation of the Soviet Union, they were still trying to tell people that the Soviet Union was an effective enemy at least a year before the Soviet Union totally collapsed. They had really no fundamental insight about the economic and the reforms in the Soviet Union. Then we had the debacle of what happened in Iran with the removal of the Shah. The CIA really had no insight that the Shah and his regime was totally unstable and was going to actively collapse at any time. Then we've had what's gone on in Egypt and the Arab Spring. And then we've had the situation in Syria. Well, how many times, and then we got the debacle of their false reporting under political pressure of what was happening in Iraq. Well, how many times does a security apparatus have to get things wrong before it's obvious that they're not really doing their job and they're not that effective, Bill?
Well, the way it works, you think it would be easier now the way it works because we have satellite pictures. So you have, there's different elements within intelligence. You've got human, which is human intelligence, where you put people on the ground and you dig inside. Then you have one step back from human, which is, talking to people, refugees, and interviewing, but not the spies on the ground. And then you have SIGINT, which is communications, listening to radio, TV, listening to all the different broadcasts, listening to tapping into phone lines. I'm not saying anything that's unclassified. And then SIGINT, you've got, I forgot what they call it, but GEOINT, where you're looking at satellites and land and movement. So you're trying to put all those things together, use formulas. And I'll tell you what, in my little bit of time working at the highest levels in Afghanistan with PhDs and all that, what I found worked the best, believe it or not, I had this PhD that simply did mathematical models. And that actually had some truth and work and could really forecast some things. So who knows what, our intelligence has changed a lot since the World War II.
Yeah, but I would put this to you. I would put this to you, but I'm not an expert in this. But it just surprises me that it doesn't surprise me really, but the media haven't really, analysed, are the internal and external effective? I think one of the factors that have made the external American security service very, in my opinion, not that effective, Bill, is an overarching reliance on signal intelligence, of interception of mobile communication, of digital
social media.
Yeah, social media, digital mobile communication, and an overarching reliance on this type of information rather than actual informers and implants and double agents, which is the traditional craft work of espionage. And I just don't think they've really, I think they really were, my impression of what I've read and heard is that when 9/11, they really didn't have a lot of Arab experts. They didn't have a lot of people in the CIA that could speak Arabic.
No, you're right.
They really, their actual resources were very poor, and through drone assassination, and that's been the main tool of the American security forces, has been utilising drones for assassination. They really rely on signal communication to identify targets and then to eliminate them. Well, I think there's a major problem with all this, Bill.
I think there are. I don't know the whole policy, but I think there are boots on the ground when they hit those targets.
I'm sure there's special, but what I mean is there isn't this deep setting up informers, double agents, a real network that really understands the local situation, that can send back detailed reports.
Well, you know, I was in the human train team system, leading PhDs, had 19 teams, PhDs in each one of them. And our whole theory was to go out into the culture, into the people, into the mosques, things like that, and get to know the people, the culture, and study that. And we were expanding. We said, this is a great program. We should expand into these other countries. And one of them was Libya, by the way. But Congress was against us. The Anthropologists Association Society was against us. Everyone was against our program. And finally, the political pressure was put on us where it was shut down, literally shut down. Duncan Hunter, the congressman in California, was the #1 person against the human train team system. Why?
What you know, I mean, Mr. Trump has made some contradictory statements about reducing the amount of bases, about making partners, Japan, Korea, the Western European countries to contribute more to the bases that left, which I think are policies, sensible policies, Bill. But on the other hand, he talks about enormous expansion in weapons systems. So there's a bit of a when it comes to Hillary Clinton, it will just be a continuance policies of bomber, which are which is a really lack of insight on in these areas, combined with a lack of cutting back any kind of arms system that the establishment wants funded. So it's a very the Obama administration's handling of internal and external security. It's been very schizoid. You can't really. In some ways, it's been hopeless. In other ways, it's because when it comes to the actual drone system, he's actually assassinated double the amount of people than George Bush ever assassinated. So it's a strange schizoid situation, really.
And with that, Jonathan, I think we need to cut the recording. And next week, I'd like to talk, depending on what happens next week, let's talk a little bit about healthcare and the future of healthcare and the campaign as we wait for next month for the primary, not the primaries, but the conventions. One last close is there is talk within the Republicans of who knows what's going to happen at these conventions. You've got the FBI with Hillary, and you've got Trump with the Republican Party saying we could change the rules. But he got 1,600 delegates, which is well more than the 12, whatever it is they need. 16. What was it? 16 something. I forgot the number.
You're talking about Bernie?
No, well, Bernie too. You got Bernie out there too, and he hasn't quit because he knows that Hillary could go down with the FBI.
Well, I've decided not to go on this march because we didn't get enough support. But I have I've helped them with their website. I think I do understand where Bernie's, just to finish off because I've got to be going in a second. Yeah. I do understand what Bernie is attempting because he feels that with the over 1,600 delegates and also the enormous support in the country that that's been shown to him, that he can actively get political, basically put enough political pressure on Hiri to get policies and individuals in her cabinet. And in a normal political situation, that's totally plausible. But I think there's a problem there, Bill. And the problem is you're dealing with Hillary Clinton. And in some ways, I see this as a kind of Chamberlain, Czechoslovakia, Hitler moment. You know, Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, flew to Munich and he thought he could do a deal with Hitler. And Chamberlain was a typical experienced politician that, you know, you do deals, right? You negotiate and you do deals. What he didn't understand, that you couldn't do a deal with Hitler because Hitler wouldn't keep his word on anything. Well, this is the problem with Bernie, with Hillary, is you can do whatever deal you like with Hillary, but the next day...
Or Trump even. Trump is. Trump seems to go back and forth somewhat. Look at the NRA thing going. Well, who knows? We'll find out. It's interesting that you said that. Hey, one thought. I want to correct something before we finish. The delegates for Donald Trump, he has 1,542. There are 32 out there still remaining. Cruz has 559, 161. What was needed was 1,239. On the Democrat side, Hillary Clinton's got 2,806, and he's got all the super delegates. She's got, of those 587 are super delegates. Bernie's got 48. So if you took away the super delegates, it would be, wow. If you took away the silver delegates, Sanders is ahead. I didn't realize that till now.
It's a terrible situation, Bill. It really is. If people really understood that, thank you for pointing that out, Bill. It really is a bad situation, isn't it, Bill?
That's amazing. I can't drop this picture in. I've tried to drop this link in, but that's just absolutely amazing. I didn't realize. I knew that I thought she was ahead, but she's behind if you take the super delegates out. Wow, that's just.
It really has become. It really is It's such a corrupt, anti-democratic situation that is breathtaking, isn't it, Bill? Just to finish,
she's got 1,700. Bernie's got 1,832 when you take away the.
Yeah, it's just to finish because I've got to go in a second.
We have to finish it up.
Is that fundamentally we've got two very inappropriate candidates that are extremely flawed, both of them, and people are just being asked to choose the best of the worst, and that really is a terrible situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I was wrong. I read this wrong. Pledged delegates are actually ahead of Sanders, but it's still interesting to look at.
It's a very small amount, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. And she had that early on. He did really well at the end of his campaigning, though. He built up quite a bit. Yeah, it's a weird situation. We'll have to see what happens. A lot happened the last 2 weeks. Probably a lot will happen this week and next. Bye, Jonathan.
See you later. Bye.
Don't leave. Just stay on for a second. Bye out there. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye from there. Okay, folks, this is a little after the discussion. You notice that the sound is a little bit smoother. Jonathan had background sound, but that brings ambience. We'll have to see how it goes when it uploads to YouTube. But we thank you for coming on. If you have any information or any ideas, feel free to send them to me at bill@conradteam.com, or you can hit to Jonathan at J. Denwood, or just Google Jonathan Denwood and you'll find his sources. But I think it's jdenwood@gmail.com, and he also has Jonathan at wp-tonic.com. So that said, appreciate the show. There's a ton to do. As you heard, I'm going to be heading off to Police Academy. I'll still be podcasting some, and I'll be working on my digital course as a backside. I think the future of podcasting is good, and sometimes media like we're talking on right now, the future is good, even though Blab may not be around.